All right, hey everyone. This is a CSS, HTML, and Bootstrap tutorial. I want to show you how to lay out this particular grid. What's important about this grid is a few of these elements are going to change order when we change from a mobile view width to a desktop view width. So as you can see, the rear bumper of this car and then this text with the kind of pinkish background. In a desktop view, the car is first and then the text is second. I'm going to shrink this down and you can see these two elements have switched places. And I do this with Bootstrap, but one thing we have to do is we have to nest a row and some columns inside of another column. This Bootstrap tutorial is for beginners that already have a little bit of experience. You do need to know how to set up a basic HTML page. You need to know how to include Bootstrap, and you need to be able to link your CSS files. You do need to know a little HTML and CSS and Bootstrap, but if you don't, it's okay. You should still be able to follow along. Also, if you just want the solution, I'm going to put a link in the description. Also, I got this template from Nicepage, a link for that in the description. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add the major parent elements. I like to use section, the section tag for any major sections of my websites. And I'm going to ID this banner. Because that's what I've decided to call this, is a banner. Okay, and then I'm going to use a Bootstrap container class, but I'm going to use container fluid. Container fluid allows full width content when you're using Bootstrap. And there's some inherent padding, I think. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And now we add our row. And I think row has some inherent margins. I'm going to remove those. You know, as you can see, based on this grid, there's no padding or margins between the columns and the rows. They've all been removed. All right, so we have our row. Consider this entire thing is a row, but we have 3 columns. One of the columns is half the width, and then the other 2 columns are a quarter of the width. And if you've used Bootstrap at all for grids, you already know that one row has 12 columns, and the way that you define column widths is by the number of columns you want that particular column to take up. So our first column, which is our big first picture of the car there, we're going to give it a class of column, and we want for large view widths to be 6 columns wide. And also, I think I'm going to go ahead and remove its padding. One thing to remember, all the HTML layout is going to be for mobile view first. I've shown you the desktop layout. To me, the desktop layout is always kind of more attractive than a mobile layout. Consider mobile layout first because more people are using it. The breakpoints that I'm going to use later in the tutorial are going to be mobile first. Our HTML and our CSS, everything is going to be mobile first, and then we work towards desktop for the mobile view. We have the car, this text with a pink background, car, text, car. So as we're designing, this is what we want to be thinking about. And then when we do our breakpoints, this is what we're going to be working towards for the desktop. This is the first column. It was half the width. The other columns are a quarter of the width. So for large screen, we want it to be 3 because that's a quarter of 12. Remove its padding. I'm going to close that off. This tells the browser that this is no longer full width. So in the mobile view, this doesn't have a width. Every child inside of this row just continues to be a full width block level element. So what this column large 6 does is says once we get to a width of a large browser size or larger, we're going to make it half the width. And then of course for this one, a quarter of the width. And we have 2 of these, so we'll just copy and paste that guy there. Remember, this middle column is the one that we're changing the elements orders. In Bootstrap, we are allowed to change the order of column. So if I wanted to change the order of these columns at any point, I can add a class called order and then a number to tell the DOM which order this element should be in relative to the others. So I might say order 3, 2, and 1, and that would all display backwards than what I have showing in my code here. We're not changing the order of everything. We're just changing the order of these 2 elements. What I decided to do was to put another row inside of that middle column. And of course, let's remove any margins that might have. And now we have a row. So this whole thing right here is going to be a row. And we're going to make each one of these a column. The image is going to be a column, and then this text, this chunk of text content is going to be a column as well. So we'll go ahead and create these columns. So I mentioned before, the row is going to allow any child elements to behave as they would behave unless we tell it specifically to make it a column of a specific width on a specific screen size. I could leave out the column class on this element and it would leave it full width. I've kind of decided that I'm more comfortable to go ahead and call it a full width column by giving it column 12 class. I'm going to go ahead and remove any padding, and then we'll close this div. All right, that's one column. I'm just going to copy it and make another one. Okay. Now, these are the columns. They're going to be switching orders. But I'm putting them in the order that I want them to be in mobile. So in mobile, this pink background is going to come before car bumper picture. Since I want this block, this column to show up first, this is the column that's going to have the text in it. And then this column here is going to have the image. Since I know that, they are already in the order that I want it to show up on mobile. But for a large screen or larger, I want the order to change then. So I'm going to use the Bootstrap class order large 2 for the first one, and order large 1 for this one. So what this is saying is that in a large screen or larger, this element is going to be first, and then this element is going to be second. So let's go ahead and put our content in. I'm going to create a div. I'm going to go ahead and give this an ID. I'm going to call it banner content 1. And we'll see when we do the CSS why I wanted this. I want to add a class. I'm going to want some padding for my content. So if I look at the content here, I removed all the padding and margins that inherently come with rows and columns. So I'm going to need some padding on either side of this content here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now by using a class padding on the x-axis, which is going to be left and right 4. For the mobile design, I'm going to want this text to be centered. So if I shrink this to mobile, you see the text goes to center. And then when it's in desktop view, to the left. So we're going to go ahead and use Bootstrap classes to style that. So if I say text center, that means all the time text is going to be centered inside this div element. But when the viewer width becomes large, I want it to align left. So Bootstrap does that with text start and text end. Bootstrap used to, in version 4 and earlier, use left and right. For 5, they started using start. So what this means is for a large viewer width, the text is going to align to the left or to the start of the element as we would read it. All right, so let's close that. And then we have some content. Now I'm just going to paste this content. You can put whatever content. I've went ahead and removed the margin from the p tag. This margin caused me a little bit of an issue with the height of the column, so I just removed the margin. And now we're going to need some content, which is going to be an image. I add these image links in the CSS. I'm going to add a div, an ID, and I'm going to go ahead and ID this as car image 2. Now I've just realized that I have forgotten this is going to need an image as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this an ID. I'm going to call it car image 1. This took care of our second column. All right, so now we're going to move on to our third column. In a mobile view, we have the image, the text, the image, the text, the image. So the last column is text and then image. That's fortunate that it's in the order that we want for both views. So we don't need to nest a row and columns. So this is a lot easier. We just need to add our content. So I'm going to add our div here with a class, just like we did on the other text. I added padding on the x-axis, and we set that to 4. And again, in the mobile view, we want the text to be center. And then for a large screen, we want it to shift left. I'll close this out. And then we will copy. You can add whatever content you want. And then below this, we're going to set up a div that is going to hold our third car image. I'll go ahead and give that an ID of car image 3. We'll have to come back and add some classes as we work through our CSS. Let's move on to the styling. First, a few basic overrides. I like to call them basic overrides. The anchor tag, because we never like the default. The only other elements that I have in here that I want to override for this little section is the H2 tag. So I'm going to do font weight to 400, line height 1.1, font size, and this doesn't have to be anything particular. It can be whatever you want. I'm putting important for a few things because I find Bootstrap working against me. And then a little bit of padding. And that should be that for the content. Like I said, you can do whatever you want to there, whatever you like. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to this tutorial. All right, so we have some banner styles that we need to work on. First, we need to set the background for our entire banner. So I'll set the background color. You can do whatever you want to do here as well. And then the font color, we're doing white. I'm going to copy and paste these like this. I've just added a background position because for this particular image, it just needed to be shifted a bit. I actually need to set a height to everything. So I have a class that I'm going to use called car image. All of the background images are going to be treated the same way. So background size, we're going to use cover. Background repeat is going to be no repeat. Background position is going to be center for all of them, of course, except for image 1 gets overridden. And then we're going to set the height. And remember, this is all for the mobile view right now. Now let's jump back to our HTML. Let's find our car images and add our car image class to them. So we have car image 1. We need a class. Car image. There we go. For car image 2, a class of car image. And then we need to find car image 3 and add the class again. Car image. Now we have to work on the text content. Let's go ahead and give our HTML content a class. Here's the container for some content, some text content, and then the container for some more text content. We're going to add our own custom class to this here. And it is going to be, let's do banner content, banner content. And let's go to back to our CSS. All right, so banner content. I've just set the height for this as well. Again, remember, mobile view. Now you see everything's starting to line up now. Our text is shifted to the top. We're going to display flex. We're going to use flex direction, and we're going to tell the browser that we want everything in a column. Now we can leverage justifying the content to the center. We got to do a background color. Let's go ahead and add that. I believe we have already assigned an ID of content1, and we're going to do the background color of whatever fancy color this is. One more thing we want to change in general is the anchor tag. Let's change the color. We'd like it to match that kind of pink color. So we're going to do that again. And let's have a little fun and give it a border. And then we'll pad it a bit. Okay, how cool. As you can see, our big image here is sitting up here. There's just a little bit of work that we need to do now for the desktop view. We're going to go to Bootstrap and we're going to grab these breakpoints. Drop those in here. I love to leave the notes that Bootstrap has with these breakpoints. So we're going to leave them. Now, we're only going to use 2 of these breakpoints, but I like to have them all there because it makes me feel good about life. So the one thing that we're going to override, remember again, we are designing mobile first. Everything that's here is mobile. If you don't override it with breakpoints, nothing changes. We're going to use breakpoints for medium devices and large devices. So I just want a little more height on these elements in a tablet view. So that's going to be our medium devices, you know, here where it says tablets. Again, I like to label my CSS, call out a parent ID, and then for the banner content, which is our written stuff, our text, I want it to be a little bit higher. Yeah. And then we're going to do the same thing for the images. So we have a car image class, and same thing, just a little higher. And I think that looks a little bit nicer for a tablet. Okay, so let's get to a large. Now we're large. Okay, we still got an issue here. Things still don't look quite right. Now the images are too tall. This one's not tall enough. What a mess. Little documentation. And then the banner content, we no longer need it to be this high. So we're going to change the height for large views, changing it to that. We're going to do the same thing for the images. Like that. And now we just have one more thing here, and that is our image 1. and we are going to make it double the height of everything else. Now you can see our large desktop view, our tablet view, and notice how these two elements, they change order, nice and smooth. And we should go all the way down to about 320 pixels. Just make sure it looks okay. But your average device is about a little over 400 pixels. So 400 pixels wide, it all looks pretty good. Okay, little chicken, you did it. You reordered a few elements using Bootstrap columns. Nice job.